Las Vegas never made sense, and that was the point. A city built in the middle of the Mojave Desert with no natural water, no strategic location, no industrial base, and no logical reason to exist, and yet, for nearly 7 decades, it became the most visited tourist destination in the United States. It became the symbol of American excess, of consequence-free pleasure, of a deal you could make with the universe. Leave your real life at the door, and for 72 hours, anything goes. At its peak, Las Vegas was receiving over 42 million visitors a year. The Strip was generating more revenue per square foot than almost any commercial corridor on Earth. The casinos were not just profitable, they were printing a kind of cultural mythology that the rest of the world watched with equal parts fascination and envy. If you want to understand how the greatest cities of our time are quietly losing everything they were built on, stay with us. Subscribe, because Empire Falls documents the kind of decline that mainstream media is too invested in the old story to admit is happening. This is the kind of fall that doesn't announce itself. There is no single moment, no crash, no visible ruin. The desert does not show cracks the way old European cities do. In Las Vegas, the collapse looks like something else entirely. It looks like lights that are still on. It looks like crowds that are still there. It looks like a city performing normalcy with the precision of someone who has rehearsed it too many times. And beneath the performance, something has fundamentally changed. To understand what Las Vegas is losing, you have to understand what Las Vegas was, not the tourist version, not the marketing version with the slogan about what happens here, staying here. The real version, the economic architecture, the cultural logic, the specific and almost miraculous formula that made a desert city the capital of the American dream at its most unhinged. Las Vegas was incorporated in 1905 as a railroad stop. For decades, it was essentially nothing, a waypoint in the sand. What changed everything was a combination of 3 forces arriving almost simultaneously in the mid-20th century. Legalized gambling when the rest of the country had banned it, cheap air travel that made it accessible to the American middle class, and the organized crime infrastructure that understood, before anyone else did, that people would pay extraordinary amounts of money for permission to be someone else for a weekend. The mob built Las Vegas. This is not a metaphor or a sensationalized claim. The Flamingo, opened by Bugsy Siegel in 1946, was the first resort casino designed not just for gambling but for the total environmental experience, the shows, the restaurants, the hotel rooms designed to keep you on the property as long as possible. Every design principle that defines the modern integrated resort was invented by men who could not legally operate anywhere else. The genius of early Las Vegas was not gambling. It was the construction of a parallel reality. You checked in, and the outside world ceased to apply. No clocks on casino floors. No windows to show you whether it was day or night. Oxygen levels carefully managed to keep you alert and slightly euphoric. Complimentary drinks to lower inhibition and extend time at the tables. The carpet patterns deliberately disorienting so you could not walk in a straight line toward the exit. Every architectural decision was an act of psychological engineering. For decades, this formula worked because it was essentially unique. If you wanted this experience, the shows, the casinos, the total permission structure, you had to come to Las Vegas. There was nowhere else to go. That monopoly is what built the empire. And the loss of that monopoly is what is quietly dismantling it. But the monopoly did not disappear overnight. It eroded, which is far more dangerous, because erosion does not trigger alarm bells. Each individual crack seems manageable. Each quarterly report gets explained away. Each empty convention hall gets reframed as a scheduling anomaly. And then one day, someone runs the numbers across a full decade, and the picture is undeniable. Here is what the numbers actually show. Las Vegas visitation peaked at 42.9 million in 2016. By 2019, the last full pre-pandemic year, it had already slipped to 42.5 million, a small decline, but a decline nonetheless. in a city whose entire economic model depends on perpetual growth. Then 2020 happened, and the city recorded 19 million visitors, a collapse so severe it exposed every structural weakness that the good years had allowed the industry to paper over. What the industry and the city government expected was a rebound to previous peaks. What happened instead was something more complicated. Visitation recovered 2022, brought roughly 38.8 million visitors. 2023 pushed closer to 40 million, but the recovery has stalled significantly below the historic ceiling, and more critically, the spending patterns of those visitors have fundamentally changed. The average Las Vegas visitor today is spending less time gambling than at any point in the city's modern history. In 2006, gaming revenue represented approximately 40% of total casino revenue on the Strip. By 2023, that figure had fallen to around 26%. The casinos are still making money, but they are making it differently from concerts, from restaurants, from day clubs and residencies and sphere experiences. From everything, in other words, except the core product that built the city. This shift has a name inside the industry. They call it non-gaming revenue dependency, and the polite framing is that it represents diversification, modernization, adaptation to a changing market. The impolite framing, the one the insider analysts whisper at conference panels and rarely put in shareholder presentations, is that Las Vegas has lost its central value proposition without yet finding a permanent replacement. Because here is the thing about gambling. It was the only product Las Vegas had that you genuinely could not get anywhere else. A concert. You can see that concert in your own city. A Michelin-starred restaurant. Major American cities have dozens. A luxury hotel pool. Miami has better weather. A shopping mall with high-end brands. Every significant American metropolis has one now. But a casino floor legally operated, culturally integrated, socially normalized, that was the product that required the pilgrimage. And that product is now available, or soon will be, within driving or short flying distance of most of the American population. This is the crack that nobody wanted to acknowledge when it first appeared in the 2000s. Sports betting, legalized in 2018 by the Supreme Court's Murphy v. National Collegiate Athletic Association decision, did not just expand gambling options for Americans. It surgically removed the exclusivity that had been Las Vegas' most powerful competitive advantage. A sports bettor in New Jersey does not need to fly to Nevada anymore. A poker player in Michigan can access legal online platforms without boarding a plane. A casual gambler in Illinois can stop at a riverboat casino within an hour of their home. Las Vegas no longer has the monopoly on permission. And what history tells us about empires that lose their monopoly on permission is sobering. Venice lost its monopoly on eastern Mediterranean trade routes when Portuguese navigators found an alternative path to Asia. Amsterdam lost its dominance in global finance when London built a more efficient capital market. Detroit lost its monopoly on American automotive production when Japanese manufacturers built plants in Ohio and Tennessee. The pattern is consistent. The erosion of the foundational monopoly does not immediately kill the city, but it begins an irreversible recalibration toward a new and lesser equilibrium. Las Vegas is in that recalibration, and the city knows it. If you have been watching patterns like this, the kind that take a decade to become undeniable, hit the like button. It tells the algorithm that this kind of investigation deserves a wider audience. The irony of Las Vegas is that the city's response to losing its gambling monopoly has been to spend its way into a new identity, and to do so with a scale and ambition that is genuinely staggering. The Las Vegas Sphere, which opened in September 2023, cost approximately $2.3 billion to construct and represents the largest spherical structure in the world. Allegiant Stadium, home of the Raiders since 2020, cost $1.9 billion. T-Mobile Arena, the Formula One Grand Prix circuit, the incoming Oakland Athletics Stadium, the rumored NFL expansion to bring a second franchise. The city has made a calculated bet, which is perhaps the most Las Vegas thing imaginable, that if it can no longer sell gambling as a unique product, it can sell itself as the premier destination for mega events, for spectacle, at a scale that no other city can match. The theory is that Las Vegas becomes the permanent home of the unmissable Super Bowls, Formula One, championship boxing, the kind of events that generate the mandatory social media documentation that drives modern tourism. It is a coherent theory. The Formula One race in November 2023 generated an estimated $1.3 billion in economic impact over a single weekend. The Super Bowl in February 2024 brought an additional $500 million. These are extraordinary numbers, but they are also weekend numbers. Spike revenue, and what a city of 650,000 permanent residents and 150,000 hospitality workers requires, is not spike revenue. It is consistent daily, reliable visitation that fills rooms on Tuesday nights and Wednesday afternoons, not just Super Bowl weekends. The midweek problem is the one that the press releases do not address. Gaming floor occupancy on non-event weekdays on the Strip has been trending quietly downward for years. Smaller casinos off the Strip, the ones that catered to locals and lower-budget visitors, the ones that were never going to host a Formula One race, have been closing at an accelerating rate. Since 2020, more than a dozen smaller Las Vegas casino properties have shuttered permanently, including the Palms Casino, which closed in 2020 and sat empty for over a year before being sold and eventually reopened, and Circus Adventuredome, which has faced multiple extended closures. The Arizona Charlie's East closed permanently in 2020. The Riviera, demolished in 2016 to make way for a convention expansion that itself has struggled to fill its calendar, was a symbol of what the city was quietly clearing away to make room for a future it has not fully defined yet. The labor infrastructure supporting this empire is also under significant strain. Las Vegas depends on an extraordinary concentration of hospitality workers. Roughly 1 in 3 jobs in the Las Vegas metropolitan area is directly tied to the tourism and gaming industry. The Culinary Union, representing over 60,000 workers, conducted a historic strike authorization in 2023, ultimately settling contracts with major casino operators after months of negotiation that exposed the deep tension between a workforce facing punishing cost of living increases and an industry whose profit margins are under pressure from all sides. The cost of living in Las Vegas, long one of its competitive advantages as a city, affordable housing, no state income tax, relatively cheap. Daily life has increased by over 40% since 2019. The median home price in the Las Vegas metropolitan area crossed $430,000 in 2023, compared to approximately $290,000 in 2019. For a workforce largely concentrated in service industry wages, this is not an abstract economic statistic. It is a displacement crisis unfolding in slow motion. The city that sold the fantasy of transformation to millions of visitors is increasingly unable to offer stability to the workers who maintain the fantasy. There is a pattern here that repeats across the history of resort cities. Atlantic City walked this road before Las Vegas. Once the dominant East Coast gambling destination, Atlantic City saw its casino revenues peak in 2006 at approximately $5.2 billion. By 2013, 5 casinos had closed. By 2020, the number of operating casinos had fallen from 12 to 9. The city has never recovered its peak. Its population today is lower than it was in the 1930s. Its poverty rate is among the highest of any city in New Jersey. Atlantic City is the city that Las Vegas's boosters will tell you Las Vegas cannot become, because Las Vegas is different in scale, in infrastructure, in brand recognition, in the breadth of its entertainment offering, and they are correct that Las Vegas is not Atlantic City. But the argument misses the structural parallel, which is not about size, it is about the sequence of decline. Atlantic City's decline began not with a single catastrophe, but with the slow erosion of its geographic monopoly, followed by a period of overbuilding and debt accumulation, followed by a crisis in the labor base, followed by the departure of the premium customer who had other options. Las Vegas is somewhere in the second and third phases of that same sequence. The premium customer is the critical variable. Las Vegas built its modern incarnation, the one that emerged in the 1990s with the Bellagio, the Venetian, the Mandalay Bay, on the theory that if you brought the high roller and the premium leisure traveler into an environment of sufficiently spectacular luxury, the halo effect would sustain the entire ecosystem. The whales at the baccarat tables subsidized the all-you-can-eat buffets. The celebrities at the residencies filled the hotel rooms for ordinary tourists who wanted proximity to the spectacle. That high-end customer is now the most aggressively courted traveler in the world, with more options for luxury destination spending than at any point in history. Macau surpassed Las Vegas in total gaming revenue in 2007 and has maintained that lead with interruptions for pandemic and Chinese regulatory crackdowns ever since. Singapore's integrated resorts offer a competing luxury gambling experience in Asia. The European luxury market pulls discretionary spending toward Paris, Monaco, and the Amalfi Coast for travelers who want glamour without the desert heat. The global competition for the premium leisure dollar has intensified at precisely the moment Las Vegas's foundational product has been commoditized. That is not a coincidence. It is the mechanism of decline. And then there is the climate. Las Vegas sits in the Mojave Desert, entirely dependent on the Colorado River for its water supply, specifically on Lake Mead, the reservoir created by Hoover Dam. In January 2022, the United States Bureau of Reclamation declared the first-ever Tier 1 water shortage in the Colorado River Basin's history. Lake Mead's water level had fallen to approximately 35% of capacity, the lowest since it was initially filled in the 1930s. Las Vegas has actually been among the more aggressive Western cities in reducing per capita water consumption. The Southern Nevada Water Authority has banned decorative grass on public land, implemented tiered pricing structures, and invested in extraordinary water recycling infrastructure. Per capita water use in the Las Vegas Valley has fallen by approximately 30% since 2002, even as the population has grown significantly. But the structural risk has not been engineered away. It has been managed, and managed risk is not eliminated risk. The Colorado River Compact, signed in 1922 and allocating water rights across 7 western states, was built on hydrological projections that climate science now considers to have been significantly over-optimistic. The river simply does not carry the volume of water that the compact assumed it would, and that gap between assumed and actual flow has been growing for decades. A city that cannot sustainably guarantee its water supply is a city with an existential variable that no amount of rebranding as an entertainment destination can resolve. The Formula One circuit does not change the hydrology of the Mojave. The Sphere does not refill Lake Mead. Empire after empire has discovered that the environment eventually wins. Rome's agricultural empire was partially undone by soil exhaustion and changing climate patterns. The great city-states of the Maya collapsed in part due to drought. The decline of Mesopotamian civilization tracks closely with the degradation of the irrigation systems that made the desert fertile. Las Vegas is not Rome, but the pattern of a great civilization building further and further from the sustainable carrying capacity of its environment and mistaking the delay between cause and consequence for evidence that there is no consequence is one of the oldest stories in human history. The city is still building. The construction cranes are still visible. The residencies are still selling out. The billboards are still lit. The welcome sign on Las Vegas Boulevard still says what it has always said. But something is different now, and the people who have been watching longest already feel it. A former casino executive who worked on the Strip for over 20 years described it recently in terms that would not make the shareholder call, but that land with uncomfortable precision. The electricity used to be real, he said. People came here believing something could change for them. That belief was the product. We were selling belief. And you can only sell that in a place where people feel like different rules apply. Once the rules apply everywhere, there's nothing special left to sell. This is what decline looks like from the inside of an empire. Not collapse, not catastrophe. The gradual deflation of the specific belief that made the thing what it was. Las Vegas spent 70 years selling the idea that it was the exception to geography, to morality, to consequence, to the ordinary laws of American life. The exception is what people were paying for. And in a world where every state has legalized some form of gambling, where every city has a concert venue and a luxury hotel, where every experience can be streamed, or simulated, or accessed locally, the exception is harder and harder to maintain. What comes next for Las Vegas is not the end. Empires rarely end cleanly. What usually follows the peak is a long negotiation with diminishment, a sequence of reinventions, each one slightly less transformative than the last, each one buying time until either a genuine new foundation is found or the debt of the reinvention itself becomes the crisis. Las Vegas is in that negotiation now. The Sphere may be part of a genuine new identity. The Formula One Grand Prix may anchor a permanent position as the world's mega-event capital. The city's low taxes and warm weather may continue attracting tech relocation and remote workers who repopulate the economy from a direction that casinos never anticipated. Or the water constraints may accelerate. Or the next recession may expose the debt load that the renovation cycle has accumulated. Or the next generation of American travelers may find that Las Vegas, having lost its transgressive edge, simply does not rank on the list of places they feel compelled to visit. The outcome is genuinely uncertain, but the trajectory, the long arc from unique to imitable, from essential to optional, from empire to something smaller, that trajectory has already been set. The decisions that determined the direction were made years ago, some of them decades ago, and they cannot be unmade by the opening of one building, however extraordinary the building. Every empire has its moment when the cracks become undeniable to everyone, not just to those who were watching early. Las Vegas has not reached that moment yet. But the city that once made the whole world believe that different rules applied here is now subject to the same rules as everywhere else. And empires, when they lose the exceptionalism that defined them, do not recover it. They become history. Empires don't fall in a day. They fall in patterns. The monopoly erodes. The premium customer finds alternatives. The environment stops cooperating. The workers can no longer afford to live where they serve. You have just watched that pattern unfold across one of the most iconic cities ever built. Tell us in the comments which city you think we should document next. And subscribe, because the next chapter of Empire Falls is already loading, and the decline we're covering there is even further along than this one.